On this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out, we find out from the panel their thoughts on Montreal's win over Detroit by a score of 3-2. But the bigger storyline, Juraj Slafkovsky getting a major penalty on his hit on Matt Luff. And also, who's been a pleasant surprise for the Montreal Canadiens this year? And then finally, the first line is producing, but can they get production from lines 2, 3, and beyond to keep themselves relevant throughout the course of the season? All this and more on this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. Welcome into a new edition of Hockey Inside Out. I'm your host, Moe Khan, alongside Stu Cowan, Andrew Berkshire, and Rick Green. The Montreal Canadiens' big win over Detroit 3-2 on Tuesday night. Gentlemen, let's recap this game here. Stu, your thoughts on the victory by Montreal, but of course, the major hit from Juraj Slafkovsky.
Well, again, a case of this team that never gives up with Marty St. Louis as coach. They were outshot 16-8 in the first period. Jake Allen played great, which he has done since the start of the season, keeping his team in the game, and they hung on there and enough to pick up 2 points on the road, which is huge. As for Slavkovsky, I think he should be suspended for it. It was a dangerous hit. I don't think it was a dirty, intentional type of hit, but it was another case of Slavkovsky at times just seems to be a little bit lost on the ice. The same when he got checked from behind into the boards, it was like he'd sort of stopped skating at the end of his shift and had loosened up and wasn't expecting to get hit, and then he did, and he fell awkwardly. And this was another case where we just sort of seemed it's not like he's 100% intense and dialed in throughout his entire shifts. He's 18 years old. He's going to learn. This is another learning lesson for him in the game against Detroit. But I think it warrants at least a 1-game suspension. If Josh Anderson got 2, I think this one deserves 1. It'll be interesting to see what the NHL does. But again, this is a Canadiens team, really entertaining game. I mean, that 3-on-3 overtime was just fantastic. It was so fun to watch. And also the amount of players that Marty St. Louis rotated in. I mean, David Savard was on the ice on 3-on-3. So it's a case of Marty St. Louis keeping all his guys having fun. This is a team that's having a lot of fun, and it shows on the ice.
Yeah, I had to wonder if they were trying to lose the game when they threw David Savard out there in OT because he has his qualities, but playing in 3-on-3 OT with all that skating, not where I would choose to throw David Savard out on the ice. But they survived it and they got the shootout win. I feel like Slafkovsky, the hit, it isn't to me the same as when he got hit and fell over and was lacking intensity. I feel like that was him being too intense and trying to be continuing to finish plays late in the game. To me, what I saw there, I don't think it's a suspendable hit. I think that comes down to a young player who's still finding his timing in the NHL. And he saw Luff was about to hit the puck from backhand to forehand and twist his body towards the other side of the ice. And he saw numbers all the way, but he expected Luff to turn. Luff fanned on the puck, so he reached back again and just continued to show numbers. And Slavkovsky foolishly followed through on the hit, even though Luff never turned. Now, it's on Slavkovsky to back off there, but I don't think he pushed him that hard. I don't think he hit him that hard. It didn't have much intent there. I think even calling that a major is more because it was close to the boards than the actual hit, and the fact that Luff fell over awkwardly. It was more of an awkward hit than a bad hit to me. You don't want to see Slavkovsky hitting guys in the numbers, but I understand what he was trying to accomplish with that hit, whereas Josh Anderson coming in at Mach 3, trying to hit a guy late in the game to build some energy, that to me was a much worse hit from an intention standpoint than what Slavkovsky did, which was just a timing issue that looked worse, I think, than it actually was. The actual takeaway from the game to me was Jake Allen. He was absolutely brilliant. I don't know what the Detroit Red Wings did to Jake Allen that he hates them so much, but 2 absolutely thrilling performances by Jake Allen in Detroit this season.
I mean, I agree with you, Andrew. Jake Allen was really dialed in. If you look at his positioning and his reaction and his reading of plays and getting to the right areas and taking away scoring chances from Detroit that had 41 shots, and they had a lot of prime time, scoring chances in some critical areas. He stood in there big. He was focused, and he was, obviously a huge part of that win. So hats off to him and his performance. And Slavkovsky, hey, listen, he made a mistake. He's a young kid that's learning. But you can't do that kind of stuff. You just saw what Anderson did, basically similar from hits from behind. they're trying to eliminate that part of the game, and he made a big decision on what he did there. Moving forward, I think that if you look, he'll have plenty of other opportunities in other areas of the ice surface that he can use his size. Everybody wants to see him become more physical. Well, he's got to learn that you can be physical, but don't do it near the boards when you got a guy with his back to you, because they just don't look at that very well in the league, and they're going to try and eliminate as much as they can. So I think, that being said, I think you're probably going to see him get suspended if you want to keep it consistent, even though he's a young kid. Maybe the 2-game mark might be a lesson learned for him, but they don't want to see this stuff happening and risk some guys really getting hurt bad.
Did you say consistent?
I was going to say the same thing.
Well, an intentional slash to the face is a 1-game suspension, and what Josh Anderson did is a 2-game suspension.
Well, that's consistent within the last few days.
Yeah. Well, even remember last season when Austin Matthews got suspended 2 games for the slash or the high stick, and they talked about how they wanted to set a precedent. 5 guys have made that exact same play this season with nothing. So when you slash a guy, a 2-handed slash in the face, and it gets a 1-game suspension, sort of everything after that is thrown out of whack. The other thing with the officiating, you're talking about Jake Allen. He stopped 2 penalty shots against the Red Wings, really, because the original breakaway was from center ice. He stopped that. I don't know how you call a penalty shot when I think Kirby Dach took a whack at him at center ice, and he had a free breakaway after that. And then they called a penalty shot on that, and he had another breakaway, and Allen stopped both of them. So, you shake your head. Gary Bettman says it's the best officiating in the world in the NHL, but man, there's nights where you just shake your head. And I shake my head even more at the Department of Player Safety run by the violent gentleman, George Peros. But there's every game, it seems, you sort of shake your head about the NHL officiating. It was one of those games where clearly the officiating didn't decide the game, but it wasn't great either. The penalties to David Savard and Caden Gooley, I believe, in the second period were flat out not penalties.
Yeah.
Right. And then the penalty shot call, if they're going to call it that way all the time, sure. But that was about as soft as a penalty shot call can get, especially after Larkin got a free breakaway on Jake Allen anyway. So credit to Jake Allen once again for stopping both those. I mean, talk about playing with swagger. I know David Perron beat him in the shootout with a fantastic shot, just all business straight down the middle and sniped it. But the swagger that Jake Allen was playing with in that shootout, just staring guys down, he had Larkin's number all night.
Yeah, David Savard blowing his cool at the referee. I mean, he's about as calm a guy as you'll ever meet, David Savard. And that penalty, the trip, I mean, he just gave the guy a push and they called it tripping. That was a joke. I think it was the 3rd penalty in a row called against the Canadiens, and he blew a gasket. You know what? I bet you Marty St. Louis won't even mind that 10-minute misconduct, although it's tough to lose David Savard for 10 minutes. But just to basically say to the referees, enough already. That's 3 in a row, and that was a bogus call. I mean, that was a really weak call on him, and could have been a huge turning point in the game. But the Canadiens penalty killers did a good job.
And unfortunately, the referees are topic of conversation each and every night. If you want to get into it in more detail, but it surely looks like the rule book that they give to the public and what the rule book says within the referees organization are 2 different books.
Now,
the bright side is the refereeing is horrible for both teams.
Right. So, gentlemen, when you look at Slavkovsky in particular now, we know the archaic rules of the NHL. You commit a crime, you must pay for it. The Habs play the Red Wings in late January in 2023. Does he have to answer the bell, perhaps if he's still with the team, on a fight with Luff down the road?
Well, he might, but Arber Xhekaj might have a say in that, because if somebody decides to go after Slavkovsky, next on the card is going to be Xhekaj, and I don't think a lot of guys around the NHL want to fight Arber Xhekaj after seeing what he did to Zach Kassian.
Well, he was even throwing his weight around on Soderblom last night. There was 2 times where he just blew him up, and that's a lot of body being thrown around, but when those 2 collide, that's a lot.
I think somebody will go after. We'll try and do something with Slavkovsky though next time they play, because that's part of the code, right?
Rick, your thoughts on this?
I'm not sure. Here's a young kid that just like I said, new in the league. I don't know whether anybody's going to make a statement by grabbing a hold of him and saying don't do that again. So I mean, stranger things have happened. But when you have a Xhekaj in your lineup, there's a lot of teams that are thinking twice about creating any kind of problems against your own teammates. And I don't think anybody wants to fight Xhekaj.
And that just it shows you just how important Xhekaj is to this team, because like fighting has thankfully come out of the game for the most part, but intimidation and that is still a part of the game. And just the fact that Xhekaj is there now just makes guys like, in a way, it reduces fighting because guys don't want to have to deal with him. It's sort of, it keeps people honest having a guy like Xhekaj in the lineup. And today's NHL, you know, you can't have the George Parises of the world just sit at the end of the bench and play 3 minutes a game and are there only to fight. You got to be able to play. And Xhekaj is unique in that he can play, he can skate, he can do everything. And if you want to drop the gloves, you know, I don't think a lot of people want to fight that kid.
Well, we're going to find out if it does happen in early January, if there is a part 2 with Luff and Slavkovsky. Now, on to this question here, gentlemen. We talk about this good start for the Montreal Canadiens. Who has been a pleasant surprise so far from the Habs that's really impressed you up until now?
I feel like there's a lot of picks that we could go with here, right? But I think the biggest one for me is, I guess to an extent, it was expected, but Nick Suzuki handling the captaincy in the way that he has, being cool as a cucumber. Like I talked about him last night on my show, Game Over Montreal. I called him forward Carey Price because he's just stalwart, right? You don't see him get shaken really ever. You might get a little bit upset about something or excited about a goal, but he just is always Nick Suzuki. He's the same guy every night. He, you know, with all that pressure of being Canadiens captain, we've seen how much that can affect a guy. We've seen, like, not to tarnish him because I think he gets underrated as a Montreal Canadiens player, but Max Pacioretty wearing that C wore him down almost immediately. Nick Suzuki at 23 has started the best season of his career wearing that C, playing with Cole Caulfield, running that top line. Now with Kirby Dach on it, they're playing great every night. It's been a pleasure to watch.
I'm leaning towards the defensive core, you know, as you know, making the honorable mention. But the guy that Arber Xhekaj that came out of nowhere, nobody really knew about him. And here's a kid at 21 years old, 6'4", that steps in the league and shows the poise that he's showing at such an early stage, and the type of respect that he commands as part of his team game is nothing but a bonus. And you know, I have to really give him full marks for the way he's handled himself and the type of game that he's playing. And he's going to continue to get better. He can skate. He doesn't do a lot of. He does make a few mistakes, which is normal. He's learning from them, but he's not afraid to jump in offensively. You know, they use him in special team situations. Again, a kid that's kind of come out from nowhere and has grabbed the opportunity to say, you know what, I want to play in the NHL. I'll do whatever I have to do. And he's grabbed the ball and he's running with it. And I got to give him full marks for the type of effect that he's having on the Montreal Canadiens group. Each and every one of those guys love him, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah, Andrew, it's interesting you mentioned Suzuki. I wrote a column about a week ago, and near the end of last season, when Chris Weidman was a healthy scratch and he was in the media lounge, and I was talking with him, and I just said to him, you know, do you think Nick Suzuki's ready to be captain of the Canadiens? And without any hesitation, he went 100%. He said he's so respected in the room. He does everything right on the ice. He does everything right off the ice. I know Canadiens management was wondering about the weight of the C, if he was ready for it. And also, don't forget, it's also the first year of his huge contract. He's making $10 million this year, including his signing bonus. So I know Canadiens management was sort of weighing that when they were wondering if he was ready. But his teammates thought he was ready. He's really respected in the room. He's one of those guys who leads by example. He's not a big vocal guy. But you're right, when you mentioned Max Pacioretty. Max Pacioretty handled all the duties of being a captain really well. He was always there to talk to the media. He did all that stuff well, but he let stuff bother him. It bothered him off the ice and on the ice. He was sensitive. Whereas Suzuki is so calm and cool. And Weidman told me he's able to get away from the game. Like when he's not at the rink, he's able to turn off his mind, which I think Pacioretty had a hard time doing that. I think Pacioretty in a lot of ways was unfairly criticized as a captain. He took a great pride in being captain. He was great with the fans. He was great with the media. He was great with the public. But Suzuki has really been impressive on and off the ice as a captain. And, Rick, you mentioned Xhekaj. I mean, nobody, I think, expected this kid to make the team. Never mind play the role that he's playing now. He's even getting some power play time. And I spoke, he played for the Kitchener Rangers, and I spoke with Dennis Weidman, who was his assistant coach there. And Xhekaj has brought his name up many times. Xhekaj said when he first started playing junior hockey, he said he didn't know how to play defense. Nobody had ever really taught him how to play in the defensive zone. And it was Weidman who pulled him aside and showed him video. And actually, I'm writing a column on that that'll be on the website pretty soon. It was him who taught him how to play defense. And he said he was a big kid. Weidman said he was a big kid. He had skill, he had talent, but his skating needed a little bit of work and the mental part of the game. And he worked with him. And Weidman is just thrilled to see this kid playing in the NHL now. And Xhekaj brings Weidman up a lot when he's talking about his development. His first year in junior, Weidman he was the seventh defenseman, and they used him a lot as a forward just to get him in the lineup. So to see, that's only 4 years ago. What a remarkable progress to go from a seventh defenseman and a fourth line forward 4 years ago to never being selected at the OHL draft, never being selected at the NHL draft, and now playing a regular minute with the Canadiens. So kudos to Arber Xhekaj. Being around the kid, he's a really likable kid. He's got a great personality. He's fun in the locker room. His teammates love him, not just because he has their back, which he has shown that he already does. So what a pleasant surprise he's been. And Jordan Harris also. I mean, we knew Jordan Harris was a good hockey player. We knew he could skate. We knew he could move the puck. But he's been physical this year. Like, he's playing a lot of minutes. He's strong on the boards. He's strong in front of the net. And those are the two guys that have really impressed me and surprised me to an extent this season.
I was going to bring up
one thing that strikes me. Sorry, what?
Sorry, Andrew,
Sean,
go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that surprises me consistently about Arber Xhekaj is how much of that quiet intensity and determination that he seems to have. Like, you see him talk, and you just know that this kid is going to stop at nothing to make himself better. He's the kind of player that you want to have on your team when you're rebuilding, and I think that's a huge thing for him. I will say, though, I hope that he takes the hockey side of Dennis Weidman's tutelage and not the attacking the ref side, because the refs already seem to be dinging him for everything that he does. So don't hit the refs there, Arber.
I was talking with Arber the other day in the locker room. I said, you're sort of pinching yourself. So he was the last guy in the locker room after practice, just him and I talking. I said, you still sort of pinch yourself that you're sitting in this locker room. And he said, to me, every day is still a tryout. He says, I'm not comfortable. Every day to me is still a tryout. Not taking anything for granted. Every practice, every game is a tryout for me. And it's been that way for him since he started junior. I don't think he told me he never really thought his first year of junior that he could play in the NHL. He said his goal then was just to play hockey as long as he could, wherever that might be, whether it would be university hockey after junior or ECHL. And as he started progressing, he said by the second or third year, he was like, maybe I can play in the NHL. And now he's here. So it's a really great story to see a kid who just didn't give up and worked hard, and hard work paying off.
I was going to bring up Sean Monahan. We spoke about him in weeks past, gentlemen. Has he been a pleasant surprise given that, his injury history that he's had, the salary that he's commanded, that, the way he's playing, we spoke about before that he could command some return value for Ken Hughes in this organization?
Absolutely. I don't think coming into this training camp that people knew for sure that he could still skate, right? The hip injuries that he's dealt with are serious. They've kept him out of an incredible amount of games, and when he was playing, he just didn't look like himself. And now all of a sudden, through all that hard work and rehabilitation that he's gone through, he's playing seemingly without pain. He looks like his old self. And frankly, he's better defensively than he was in Calgary. He's on pace to have more time on the penalty kill this year than he's ever had at any point in his career. And he's playing extremely well. He's producing offense on the penalty kill. So it's great. All things coming up well for Sean Monahan. Obviously, the offensive production isn't amazing because nobody's really scoring outside of that top line. But over the course of a season, that'll change. Guys get hot and cold over different streaks. And I would be not shocked at all if the Montreal Canadiens were able to command a first-round pick at the end of the day when it comes to trade deadline for Sean Monahan.
I think it's a great addition, and I'm really happy to see that he's healthy and showing what he can show. And down the stretch here, you're probably going to see him continue to do his part in helping the team in a number of ways. And happy for him, and I'm happy he's on the Montreal Canadian Hockey Club.
Yeah, and he's had surgery on both hips over the last 2 years. And you look at Paul Byron, the issues he's had with the surgery, that he's still not back. So yeah, with Monahan, I mean, he's such a smart hockey player. I mean, his stats from the past in Calgary speak for himself. Before he was hurt, he had said during training camp it had been like 3 years at least since he had played without any pain. So we're seeing him play without, and he's just such a smart hockey player. And he will have a high value, I think, at the trade deadline. Smart player, offensive ability, can kill penalties, big centerman, can also play in the wing. So for a team going into a playoff drive, looking to pick up a veteran who can basically do just about everything and is a really smart player, if he can stay healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if Kent Hughes can get that third first-round pick next year by dealing Monahan. And then if the Canadiens decide they want to keep him moving forward, they could always re-sign him again in the summer if they wanted to as a free agent. But it's just a smart hockey player. I really enjoy watching him play. He does everything right.
Well, whether it's Sean Monahan or Arber Xhekaj, this DNA of this Montreal team is a lot more pleasant to watch than it has been the last couple of years under this organization and how they've been so far. Well, for the Montreal Canadiens, they have great production from line number 1. The question now remains for lines 2 and 3. Can they get some production, Rick, on how they've been sort of obsolete in this early going into the season so far?
Well, look at when you have your first line, taking care of almost 40 or 50% of your goals, your offensive stuff. It's asking a lot for that to carry on for the whole season. But judging from the Detroit game, Hoffman found a way to get to the right place at the right time. I'm not sure if this is going to be like a long-term result of him producing. Obviously, everybody's hoping, but he's the kind of player that he's kind of streaky. He goes quiet, then he finds finds his way and starts to make things happen offensively. And Gallagher is Gallagher. He tries like hell, and he's got it's got 3 points. He's got a couple of goals. It's really tough, and even the other guys, Drouin doesn't have any goals. You look at the list of even Evans, Armia. There's nothing happening there. So they're really in a tough position if you want to really look at the points or opportunities that these guys are getting. It's not happening, and they're going to have to start to find ways to chip in to help take some pressure off their first line, because you're asking a lot for them to go the whole season, lighting it up each and every night. So you need more from those second and third line guys. I know they're trying different combinations, standing off, throwing him in here and there, but it's not happening, and they're going to have to find a way to do their part in creating some offense.
Yeah, and they also need more from the power play, which ranks 28th in the NHL. But, you look at the stats. You have Armia, 5 games, no goals. You've got Dadonov. This is going into the game Wednesday against Vancouver. You got Dadonov, 9 games, no goals. Jake Evans, 13 games, no goals. Jonathan Drouin, 10 games, no goals. You need to get some kind of production out of those guys. The good news is, of course, with Hoffman getting 2 goals in Detroit, and both of those goals were off rebounds from Brendan Gallagher. Now, Gallagher's only got 2 goals going into the game against Vancouver, but he could have 10. He's shooting up. Gallagher's really playing well. He's getting lots of chances. He's making lots of good shots. Goalies are making saves on him. At some point, they're going to start going in for Gallagher, I think. And Hoffman was able to take advantage of Gallagher's shooting by banging in both of those rebounds against Detroit. There were 2 easy goals. So I think Gallagher's going to get, Gallagher, I think, has played really well right since the start of training camp. And as I said, he could have had 3 goals the game against St. Louis. He's had lots of great chances, lots of great looks, are just not going in. Eventually they will. But these other guys, Jonathan Drouin, he's competing out there, he's working, but it's just not happening for him. And there's a part of me that almost feels bad for him. Everything he's gone through, he's trying, he's working, and it's just not happening for him. But Hoffman's a guy, we're talking about guys being available at the trade deadline that they'd like to move. There's a guy they'd really like to move if they can, and him scoring a couple goals like that is key. But you can't just rely on your number 1 line to produce, as Rick said, 50% of your offense, and they also need to get more out of the power play.
Yeah, they absolutely do. The power play has to be a big factor going forward. I will say I do like the Gallagher-Dvorak pairing in terms of their offensive potential. I liked Josh Anderson there for a couple of games, but I wonder if what we end up seeing is when Slavkovsky takes the next step this season, he moves up there instead of Josh Anderson, because as much as Josh Anderson, he can have these fits and spurts of offense, he's not a very consistent player. His offense usually comes from individual plays where he's rushing down the ice, barreling through defensemen, trying to crash the net, not necessarily using his teammates very well. He's been doing that better this season, I think, than at any other point that I've seen him in a Montreal Canadiens jersey, but still very limited and very poor defensively. And when you look at that line with and without Anderson, the defensive numbers are not great with Anderson on it. So I wonder if Slafkovsky, once he moves up into that spot, if he does this year, if we start seeing more consistent scoring out of that line, because it creates a little bit more. But the other option is what we saw for at least one shift last night was Slavkovsky with Monahan, because Monahan has not had much help creating any offense on his line. But that one shift with Slavkovsky, there was a little bit of magic there. So I wonder if just moving the young guy up one of those lines will create something and have a secondary or tertiary scoring line for the Montreal Canadiens. And as Stu said, these things, what we see in the first 12, 13, 15 games is not what the rest of the season will be. The Montreal Canadiens right now, while Suzuki and Caulfield are on the ice at even strength, are scoring on 19% of their shots. And while the rest of the team is on the ice, it's like 3% or something like that. It's not great. So that's going to shift over the season. It's going to equalize a little bit. Other guys are going to get like hot streaks, like Hoffman maybe is on the start of one after finishing a couple of Gallagher shots. So it'll even out over the course of the season. Suzuki and Caulfield won't be this hot all year. Whether they'll have consistent secondary scoring, probably not, because the team is still not great. But more consistent than we've seen, definitely.
Slavkovsky with Dvorak and Gallagher would be an interesting fit. I mean, Dvorak's a similar type of player to Phil Deneau, and we know how well Brandon Gallagher played when he was with Phil Deneau and Tatar. And they're two guys that are really good at both ends of the ice, and they both have really good work ethics. So for Slavkovsky, two veterans like that would be able to cover up some of his deficiencies he still has, and especially in the defensive zone along the boards. So that could be an interesting fit, in having that big body going up and down the wing with them. But Dvorak and Gallagher so far as a duo really look good. And, with so much of today's NHL now, it's more about duos and trios. You have two guys who play together, and then a third guy sort of comes in. We've seen that with Suzuki and Caulfield, and sort of a rotating cast of players playing on their wings. But Dvorak and Gallagher is something I'd like to see stick together for a while. I think they complement each other really well, and Hoffman was the beneficiary of that against Detroit.
And let's face it, there's 13 games in, with the abundance of forwards that they do have available. Guys are going to get moved around. They're going to try some different combinations and trying to build some chemistry in that, second and third line, if you will. And, they have some players that have shown in the past that they can do it, but it's not happening right now. So I'm sure that there's lots of conversation. Okay, who can we play with this guy? Who do you think can complement that guy? And again, early on in the season, this is something that they can experiment with, and they do have the luxury of having extra bodies to throw some guys in and out of the lineup.
Yeah, the other thing that was difficult for St. Louis for the start of the season is carrying 15 forwards. And as you said, he doesn't want guys sitting for too long. I mean, Michael Pezzetta's only played one game. So that's created a lot of revolving door type of thing with wingers and lines changing all the time, just because he's trying to get 15 forwards and trying to get them all some playing time. So, Rem Pitlick is, after clearing waivers down to Laval, that's one less body. When Mike Matheson comes back, somebody else is going to have to go. So I think once they get down to 13 forwards, that'll solidify the lines or give St. Louis the ability to solidify the lines a little bit more than he has been able to so far.
You brought up the point stability, Stu. Gentlemen, what do you think? Is it by game 20 we should have a better idea of what lines 2 or 3 could be? Or are they going to still experiment with guys moving up and down the ranks?
Well, lines always change, right? I mean, as I said, it's more duos than trios. I think we'll see two guys sticking together more by that point, with sort of other guys sort of rotating in. But lines are not just with the Canadiens, but all teams. I mean, the lines change a lot. The days of when you'd have 3 guys play together for 5 years without changing are gone. Now it's more of more fluidity. when it comes to lines right throughout the NHL. But I think we'll get a better sign 15, 20 games in. Like, is Dvorak and Gallagher going to stick together? Like, is Jake Evans going to have a regular guy on the fourth line with him? So those are the kinds of things I think we'll figure out more.
Yeah, I think the only line in the league that's lasted like more than 2 years together, really, in the last 5 or 6 is that Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And even that line, once in a while they move the guy around. But yeah, I mean, you go back to the old days in the NHL in the 70s. I remember you have guys who play the same line together almost for their entire career.
Well, I'll say this, gentlemen. NHL, there's always a lot of interchange in the lines, but this is the trio here that stayed the same all throughout the course of this show here. Well, submit your questions and comments on Hockey Inside Out. Leave us a comment. We'll talk about that for future episodes. And don't forget to subscribe onto the YouTube page on Hockey Inside Out and the newsletter, MontrealGazette.com/newsletters, and sign up for Hockey Inside Out. And for all the bonus content and full episodes, go on Hockey Inside Out for all of that plus more. On behalf of Stu, Andrew, and Rick, I wish you a great week. Bye for now.